In this Olympic year, British design has been on show along with everything else in Britain. And the V&A here has had an exhibition on post-war British design since 1948. It's been going on since April. And now it culminates with Thomas Heatherwick, who is having an individual retrospective as a sort of climax to the season. So, Thomas, perhaps you could talk us through your exhibition a bit. Starting here, before we even get to the exhibition, can you explain what this is?
All the exhibitions here at the museum, you get given a guide, a gallery guide. And when we were there working with the graphic designers, thinking about how would you do a gallery guide, and they mustn't be a sort of pseudo book, because books are separate things. And we were sort of thinking about all this paper stuff. And I remembered we did a project years ago in Glasgow, and the Glasgow Herald prints in the centre of Glasgow, and every day we'd walk past from where we were staying to where we were installing a project, and there were these incredible rolls of paper, and you'd look at them and think they were just so they just looked like there was something good you could do with them, and so that sort of triggered the idea of whether we could have the need, which is 1/2 ton of gallery guide that's otherwise in sort of polite piles. Instead of piles of folded things, whether you unroll it yourself. This is the first time I'm doing it. So as you can see, there's no one's really taken one before. So this, you unroll this, your gallery guide, and so you can then pore over when the studio did this, or the different, the exhibition is done by the V&A, and so these are the words of the curator, Abraham Thomas.
So Thomas, you've got your retrospective exhibition, you've also got a book published of all your projects that you've created, built and unbuilt, up to date. And there are so many ideas in there that I'm just wondering, how do you do it?
I find that ideas come as a solution to a problem, and it's defining for yourself what that problem is. That drives the feeling that something's almost gnawing at your mind, and that pushes you to something. If you're asking where do ideas come from, it was from that sort of line of inquiry, or kind of wondering, and then defining an aesthetic problem, and the solution to that leading to couple of experiments that ended up becoming the UK pavilion in Shanghai, representing the UK in its entirety to Asia, that was in 2010. And this is actually a full-size piece of it, but it was from sort of questioning or curiosity, and in Shanghai there was definitely the brief said there's 250 pavilions and the British pavilion better be in the top 5. And we're giving you half the budget of the other main Western nations. So there was really, it needed your wits about you to think about, well, what would you do that therefore would have meaning, which wasn't to do with quantum of budget. And so it was this idea to do with texture of architecture, and then combining it with working with the Millennium Seed Bank, one of the Royal Botanic Garden of Kew's initiatives. And that's why sort of over here we have some of the seeds that were on the ends of each one of these individual hairs that made the seed cathedral. This is fun. This is insured for the highest value in the whole of this room, because after the expo there were some of these seed ends that were auctioned for charity. And one of them went for £15,000. So suddenly these pieces of plastic with rare seeds in them have sort of turned into some value object, which wasn't the idea at all.
Well, having represented Britain at the Shanghai Expo over there, you were also called upon to revamp another national icon in the form of the Route Master bus here.
It's funny, London is famous for its red double-decker buses. So there's this thing that's actually precious to London's identity, and yet it's 50 years since London's Transport Authority last let a designer think about what was the appropriate way to make a bus specifically for the quirks and particularities of London streets. In a way, it's all detail. What you look at here is we've made the stairs, the windows follow the circulation. So there's 2 staircases, one that goes up the back, one that goes up the side here. And so the windows follow you up. Instead of having a fiberglass tube you walk through, it just thought, well, you'd get the best views out of London. These buses that are the architecture of London in many ways, are a key part of that experiential dimension, and it felt that needed to be borne in mind. This is a design for a Buddhist temple that we were commissioned to do by a Buddhist monk of the Shingon-shu sect in Kagoshima, in the southernmost city of Japan. Our priest wore these incredible fabrics that were, his robes were quite extraordinary. We ended up buying lots of silks and trying to see whether we could use a single piece of fabric to make a building. And we ended up finding a particular kind of, it was actually a very fine foam. It doesn't sound so romantic then, but it made, just manipulating this fabric, we could make the program of the building. So these were all the spaces we needed. And then using this foam, we could make the, it pushed back at us. So instead of a kind of computer-generated form could be anything, this is a single sheet manipulated, and it manipulates the design and creates spontaneous aspects. The spaces were designed by the way the fabric manipulated. So, and this was partly also influenced by the old masters. You know, you see a painting, an amazing portrait that's 300 years old, and it's all about the portrait of the trader or whoever they were. But I always used to kind of go dung down. Is to test whether the painter was a good painter. Is how do they paint the folds of fabric? Because the form in the fabric is really something. So it was trying to push form to the limit, fabric to the limit of, could it become not just a ruckling detail? Could it be the form of a whole building?
And so, having represented your country in these various ways, you're also designing the cauldron for the Olympic Stadium, I hear.
We're working with Danny Boyle, the film director, who's doing the opening ceremony, and he asked us to do the conclusion of his ceremony. The cauldron is something, it has to sit there and do a job for 2 weeks, but it's also a moment. The moment of it being lit is so we've been learning from working alongside a film director. We've never done that before.
Are there any particular projects you regret not having made, or are they in storage to kind of come alive again sometime?
We've just placed there as broad a spectrum of things that we've been working on for 18 years, including things that are halfway there or 3/4 of the way there or might not be there. But so I'm feeling that it's going to be very legible from now on. You know, the next projects we do, someone's going to be able to really go, right, how does that relate to what you did in the past? I've always been able to hide that I haven't had, I've never been so exposed like this.